so difference of two squares. So on Tuesday, we started looking at the last method for factoring. I'm assuming Morgan forgot his at home and is not going to open his mouth and say, hey, Mr. Lowe, I forgot mine at home. Could I get another copy? So, yes, thank you, Morgan, for opening your mouth, saying, Mr. Lowe, I don't have my copy. Can I get another copy? What's the worst thing that can happen if you open your mouth? What's the worst thing that can happen? You don't know? How about you try it? You're almost a sophomore, right? Then I need you to, maturity has to step up at some point. Opening your mouth is not going to hurt. That goes for everyone here. Opening your mouth does not hurt. Does not hurt. See, there you go. Opening your mouth does not hurt. And you know, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Can't keep playing games all night. So, difference of two squares. So, to solve using the difference of two squares, we need three things to take place. Number one, you must have two terms. Number two, you must have a minus sign in between. Number three, both terms need to be perfect squares. So the three requirements that I just wrote down, I mean, they're summarized in that box underneath, but those are the three things that have to happen if you're going to use the difference of two squares. So on Tuesday, we looked at two examples that work, two examples that don't. We looked at two examples that were already done for us. And then we did four examples that used difference of two squares. That last example also has grouping in it. So we're going to do another example that also has grouping in it. We're going to do another example that has grouping in it. And then we'll solve a couple of equations with difference of two squares. So, any questions from anyone? Any questions at home before we jump on into this thing? All right, so let's go ahead and look at example 7. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so I can have some room. So, example 7. It's 18, a to the third plus 9a squared minus 8a minus 4. So, first things first. How many terms do we have? How many terms is sitting up there? Don't be shy. How many terms do I see? 4. So if you have 4 terms, how many, so if you have 4 terms, what method is that? What method can you use if you have 4 terms? Well, MAF is 3 terms. MAF plus is 3 terms too. So greatest common factor works for anything, grouping. But if you have 4 terms, you specifically use grouping. So we're going to use grouping to solve this problem. So, to solve the problem, there's a group. There's your 2 groups. at your first group. What can I divide out of 18 and 9? You have 18 and you have a 9. What can I divide out of both? I can do better than that. 9. So you can divide out 9. Can I take out a variable? Yes. So a squared. Remember, if you take out a variable, you take out the smallest exponent. If you take out a variable, you take out the smallest exponent. You have 9a squared, parentheses, 18 divided by 9 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1, so 2a. 9 divided by 9 is 1. A squared divided by a squared drops out. Go to the second group. Second group, does it start with a plus or a minus? Minus. Pull out the minus. What can I take out? What can I divide out of 8 and 4? 4. So negative 8 divided by negative 4 is 2. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. So we finished up that part. So, do both parentheses match? The 2 parentheses match? Yes. So, take out 2a plus 1. Divide it out. That's 9a squared minus 4. So we've done the grouping part. We've done the grouping part. Any questions before we continue? Yeah, those of you who are at home, you can ask a question too. Yeah, crunch time now. So you know you got to get your grade up. Look, you got to start getting a lot of stuff right. Just turning it in ain't good enough. You got to start getting stuff right. Oh, now let's look at the problem. We're looking for perfect squares. We're looking for perfect squares. So, are there any numbers up there that are perfect squares? Any numbers up there that are perfect squares? I know Morgan can find one, and he's going to find one. Yep, tell me one of them. Okay, so we have 9 and a squared. Those are perfect squares. What else up here is a perfect square? 4. That's a perfect square. So that means something times itself will give me 2. Well, 2 is the number times itself that gives you 4. So 4 is the perfect square. 1 is the perfect square. So everything that just got underlined is a perfect square. So look at what I just put a box on. How many terms is that? 2 terms. Isn't there a minus sign? You got a minus in between. And everything is a perfect square. So both terms are perfect squares. Those of you who are at home, again, don't sit there being quiet if you don't whole time know what you're doing. You know your whole time confused. You better come off of mute and say something. Do not wait until you have this test in front of you on Monday and Tuesday to then want to start asking. It's too late at that point. Once you got the test in front of you, I can no longer answer anything. You're on your own. And both of the tests on both days are in class. There isn't a part that you're doing on your own. You're in class both terms taking the test. So we're going to rewrite 9a squared minus 4. So this will help out those people who was absent on Tuesday. So let's start with the 9. We're looking for what times itself will give me 9a squared. So what times itself will give me 9? 3. What times itself will give me a squared? So a times a. So 3a times 3a will give you 9a squared. What times itself will give you 4? 2. 2 times 2. So that means 9a squared minus 4 can be broken down a little bit more. So that means your answer for that is 3a plus 2, 3a minus 2. Remember, yesterday on Tuesday, one has to be a plus and one has to be a minus because the positive times a negative is negative. 2a plus 1, you just put it in front of it because you didn't do anything with it. So that's your answer right there. That's your final answer right there. Any questions with example number 7? Any questions at home or any questions in here? Again, if there's even the littlest part that you're stuck on, you got to say something. I cannot read your mind, nor am I going to read your mind. So we leave 2a plus 1 alone because we can't break that down any further. So the question is, why don't we touch 2a plus 1? So let's go through our steps. Do we have 2 terms? Yes. Is there a minus sign in between? No. No. So the fact that that plus is there, we don't do anything else with 2a plus 1. We're good with it. No problem, that's okay. You answer the question. That's what I appreciate. Any other question, example 7? Move on to solve equations. All right, so let's move on to solve equations. Examples 8 and 9. So remember, solving equations, you need the equation equal to 0 before you can kick things off. So for example 8, y squared minus 64, it's already equal to 0. So remember, first step is get the equation equal to 0. You don't have to write these steps because you already have it in your notes a couple times. Get the equation equal to 0. Now we factor it. So y squared minus 64. So the first thing you do with all factoring is look for a greatest common factor. What's the biggest number you can take out? You got a 1 and you got a 64. What can you take out? 1. Do we have the same variable? No. So your greatest common factor is 1. There's nothing to take out, so we keep it moving. So, we have two terms. You have a minus sign in the middle. So you have two terms, and you have a minus sign in the middle. So we can see a difference of two squares will work. So for y squared, is there anything times itself that will give you y squared? Y times y. Anything times itself means it has to be the exact same thing multiplied. $64. Is there anything times itself that will give you 64? 8 times 8. 8 times 8 is 64. So that means when we write this out factor, that's y plus 8 and y minus 8. We're still equal to 0. Any questions before we continue?
So the first parentheses has to be plus, and then the second has to be minus. Right?
First one's plus, second one's minus. If you switch it up, it doesn't make a difference. All right, step 3. So step 3 is to split the equation up. So that's y plus 8 equals 0. Y minus 8 equals 0. Step 4, solve each equation. Subtract 8, y equals negative 8. Add 8. Positive. That's it. Problem's over. Any questions? Example 8. We got one more example before we start the review part. A little bit too far. Sorry about that. All right, so example 9. The last part we got. Last part we had. Solve the equation by factor. We have 12a to the third minus 27a. 12a to the third minus 27a. So we've got our steps sitting right there to guide us. is the equation equal to 0? So we need to get rid of 27A. So how do we get rid of this 27A? We need it equal to 0. So 27A has to move. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, what we gonna do? Take a guess. It might go, because wrong is wrong. Who cares? Y'all here awfully quiet. You three in here awfully quiet. Y'all need to speak up. You came to hybrid so that you can actually talk and ask the teacher. Do that later. I need you focusing on this now, because that should have been done the whole time. That's a positive 27A. What's the opposite of positive 27A? Negative. Yeah, Morgan, that means speak up, man. What's the opposite of 27A? Negative 27A. You know this. Speak up. You're not sitting in here being quiet. When y'all come back to school next year, y'all can't sit in the classroom and be quiet. Especially if you don't understand something. You gotta speak up. So 27 minus 27 is 0. 12a to the third minus 27a. So that's what we have. So we're done with step number 1. So step 1 is taken care of. Now we got to factor. First step of factoring is greatest common factor. So is there anything I can divide out of 12 and 27? I can take more than one out. I can take out 3. I can divide both of those by 3. Both of those have an A in it. So you can take out an A too. So it's not always going to be 1. Remember, factoring is hard because the multiples aren't all the way there. You have a factor chart. Use it. So 3a. 12 divided by 3 is 4. A to the third, A to the first is a squared. 27 divided by 3 is 9. A to the first and A to the first. A to the 0 power, so it drops out. So we took out the 3a. Now let's see if we can use difference of 2 squares. So we have that 4. What times itself will give you 4? 2. What times itself will give you a squared? A. So 4a squared is the same thing as 2a times 2a. Perfect square. The 9. What times itself gives you 9? 3. So that means we can break up this second parentheses. 2a plus 3, 2a minus 3. So now we're done factoring. Any questions before we continue? All right, so let's keep the problem going. Split each equation up. Split the equation up. So you have 3 parts. So 3a equals 0. 2a plus 3 equals 0. 2a minus 3 equals 0. That's all splitting it up is. Say each part equal to 0. So step 4 is to solve it. So each color represents each of the 4 steps. So for 3a equals 0, divide each part by 3. So a equals 0. There's one answer. 2a minus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3. And divide by 2. So a equals negative 3 over 2. Two a minus 3 equals 0. Add 3. Divide by 2. A equals 3 over 2. There's your 3 answers. Built. Any questions? Example 9. Any questions from the 3 that are in here? All right. Not seeing any, not hearing any. Questions going once. Questions going twice. And boom, let's start reviewing. We're going to test it.